A new law in Maryland says that landlords can't decide who they want to sell their properties to. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. Alright, so I have an interesting article for you today, and it's going over some of the new laws that were passed in the state of Maryland to supposedly help renters, okay? And remember, every time that there is a law that passes that helps renters, it really punishes landlords, and it punishes the good landlords in particular. And when I was going through this, it really hit me how this law in particular hurts small mom and pop landlords the most. And I couldn't believe it, honestly. I was like, why would anybody want to punish small mom and pop landlords like this? But hey, that's exactly what this law does. And I'm going to explain more about why it hurts small mom and pops the most. And you know what? You'll understand if you know anything about real estate investing, if you know anything about being a landlord, that hey, these sort of laws, they benefit the big corporations, they benefit the big players who have billions of dollars, but the people who are trying to get started, the people who are trying to get their first investment property, maybe they only have one investment property, well, they're the ones who are going to suffer. So before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like, subscribe button, maybe leave a comment down below, let me know what you think. So what do you think of a law, okay, that requires that a landlord sell their property to their tenant first? Okay, the tenant has the first right of refusal of, when a landlord is selling their property. What do you think of that sort of law? My personal opinion is the property owner should be allowed to choose who they want to purchase their property, period. Who they want to sell their property to. The tenant, if the landlord doesn't want to sell the property to the tenant should never, and I mean never, have the right to jump over, knock out whoever the prospective buyer is and say, nope, I get first choice on this, okay? But anyway, let's get into the article. And the law, the worst part about this whole thing is that is only one part of this new law that passed. So let me tell you about the whole thing. Let's get into it. This article is coming from citybiz.co, and it says, the Renters' Rights and Stabilization Act of 2024, key changes and implications for Maryland landlords and developers. All right, let's get into it. On April 25th, 2024, Governor Wes Moore signed into law House Bill 693, known as the Renters' Rights and Stabilization Act of 2024, to protect Maryland renters who are experiencing housing instability. While the act aims to strengthen protections for Maryland tenants, it also comes with significant consequences for landlords and developers managing residential and commercial properties. These consequences have sparked criticism and concern among opponents that the act will lead to an unfriendly market for landlords and developers, and thereby counter efforts to increase the supply of affordable housing for the renters it's intended to serve. And that is exactly what it's going to do, okay? Landlords, developers, people are going to say, hey, I don't even want to be a landlord. I don't even want to be a landlord because I don't have control of my property. That's the problem when you pass laws such as this, okay? You discourage people from wanting to rent their properties out, and then you discourage developers from wanting to build new properties. Yet they sit there and they're like, oh, well, you know what? There's no supply. There's not, prices keep going up through the roof. We can't figure out why. Well, you created the issue with too much laws, rules, and regulations and too much government bureaucracy. I was going to cover something that I saw out of Australia and their rental market, and I decided not to make a video on it because it's just so different than it is here in the US. So they basically had this tribunal that makes decisions on whether, if you decide to evict a tenant so that you can move into your own property, whether they think that you're enough of a victim in order to move into your own property. So basically, even if you wanted to, let's say, get out of the rental business, or let's say that you wanted to move into the property on your own or sell your property empty, you couldn't do any of those things in this I think it was Victoria in Australia, right? You couldn't do any of those things. You had to stay in the business. You had to keep renting your property out for a low price to these people, even if you didn't want to leave the business, or even if you didn't want to be a landlord anymore, okay? You were forced to be a landlord. You were forced to basically be a homeless shelter and a subsidized housing provider. That's where we are headed here in America, okay? That's what these laws are trying to do, where you don't have a choice anymore, where this isn't an investment. Now you have become a welfare agency. Your pocketbooks are now paying to make sure that people have somewhere affordable to live, and making sure that people, just random people, aren't homeless. That's what you have to do. And I was like, man, this is a nightmare. This is where U.S. policies are headed. But anyway, let me continue with what this Maryland law says. So the act undoubtedly will have a lasting impact on both residential and commercial rental industries. The key provisions and areas affected include the tenant's right of first refusal, surcharge for landlord-tenant cases, security deposits, warrants of restitution, and Office of Tenant and Landlord Affairs and Tenant Bill of Rights. And so the main focus that I'm going to cover today in this video is the tenant's right of first refusal. And this is for residential rental properties, okay? And let me explain why this is going to hurt small mom and pop landlords after I read through this. Tenant's right of first refusal. The Renters' Rights and Stabilization Act grants a right of first refusal to tenants of residential rental properties that contain 3 or fewer individual dwelling units. This means that owners of such properties are now required to give tenants the opportunity to purchase the rental property before selling to outside parties. The Act does not mandate a right of first refusal in all circumstances. Excluded are situations involving residential rental properties with 4 or more individual dwelling units, transfers of title to a business entity wholly owned by the owner, transfers by a fiduciary, transfers of title in lieu of foreclosure of a mortgage deed of trust, and family transfers, among other cases. Nevertheless, the requirements will be detrimental to the value and marketability of residential property, as owners will only be able to negotiate with other buyers after each tenant declines to exercise his or her right. So, immediately, when I started reading that, you saw that, this law specifically is only for residential rental properties with 3 or less units. So which landlords own primarily 3 or less unit rental properties? That's small mom and pop landlords, okay? Individual owners, non-corporations, okay? People like me, people like a lot of the people watching my videos, okay? We are the ones. And also, small mom and pop landlords provide the overwhelming amount of affordable housing. So you see where this is going. So if small mom and pop landlords now have to offer their property up to their tenants immediately, and are unable to sell the property to whoever they want. So let's say, for example, that you have a friend. That's right, a friend who you wants to get started in the real estate business. You have a property that is, it's a good rental. It is, just something that you want to help your friend out with. And you're like, okay, I'm going to sell this property to my friend. You can't do it. Nope. It's against the law. It's a single family. Nope. Then the tenant's like, no, I want to buy it. I want to buy it for that price. I'm like, no, I don't want to sell it to you for that price. I will not. In fact, I'm sure a lot of landlords will be like, well, you know what? If I can't sell it to who I want to sell the property to, I'm not going to sell it at all. Or I'm going to mark the price up so high that the tenant has zero possibility of being able to purchase it, right? So basically what am I saying? Prices could be inflated because of this law. I'm saying that you could discourage people from selling properties due to this law, and you could definitely increase the rent, increase the tension between landlords and tenants due to this law. Places that have these laws, like I believe Washington, D.C. has a law that says the tenants will have the first right to purchase the property. Places that have these laws in general, the real estate prices are outrageous. They are sky high. Landlords in general, landlords, developers, they don't want to rent their properties out, or they don't want to build new real estate development as often. And you know what? What we end up with is the big players, the people who own more than 4 units, they don't have to sell their properties to anybody. So guess what? They're the only ones who are going to end up existing in the long run. Now, it won't happen immediately. And will it benefit tenants? That's the question, right? Like, how many tenants are actually going to be able to purchase the property from the landlord? Not many. A lot of tenants don't have good credit. A lot of tenants don't have the emergency reserves. A lot of tenants are in no state or shape in order to purchase a property. But if it has a chilling effect on what the landlords and developers are doing, then that means the tenants will still, the 95+% of tenants who have no chance whatsoever purchasing their property, those tenants will still be negatively impacted by this sort of law. So what do you think? Okay? Do you think that this sort of law is good for tenants? Do you think that it's good that they can basically jump in there and purchase a property from the landlord, even though the landlord doesn't want to sell it to them? Do you think that's a good thing? Do you think that small mom and pop landlords are going to be just fine? Do you think the prices will increase because of this sort of law? What negative impacts do you see? Anyway, put a comment section down below. Let me know.